Let's talk about the $1 billion worth of shares buyback of Bitmine, okay? What it could do for the stock, for the sentiment of investors, and when they most probably will do it. All about this here in this vlog, and let's dive in.
Welcome to the game, I'm the wolf of Dubai.
If you don't know who I am, my name is Danny. I'm looking for 10, 20, 30x stock opportunities like I did for Tesla. I invested my life savings into Tesla when it was a $17 company. I averaged down to 6, and then from there, it's absolutely history. My subscribers went on a spending spree and bought apartments or even houses in the US, and you should be subscribed to this channel, not only to one channel, but to both channels, okay? And I also want to mention my own product. There's never advertising for anything else on this channel than only mentioning my own product, where we spend years of building a software where we can trade for you, all automatically, all done for you. You just have to switch on the software and you get all the trades all automatically in your portfolio. If you have $10,000 or more, get a call with me personally and we see if we can help you as well. Now, let's talk about Bitmine's share buyback, okay? So first of all, why companies buy back shares in the first place? Well, there's a fantastic story by Apple, for example, okay? As you know, Apple made a lot of cash through their business, selling, very high-tech, very premium products. And then, one day Steve Jobs said, well, we're making all that cash. Who's better to ask than Warren Buffett to what we could do with all that cash? So he went and she spoke to Warren Buffett, and Warren Buffett said, you know what, take that cash and buy back your shares, okay? What it does for the company? Well, first of all, it shows the investors and the market that Apple thinks, or the company thinks, in this case also Bitmine, they will see, okay, Bitmine thinks that the stock is undervalued, because with a lot of cash you can do many different things, but if you're buying back your shares, you think that your company is undervalued. And let's think about it, like if the management decide that they have all the information of future products, future growth opportunities, the market, and so on and so forth. So they obviously, this is like a very bullish sign, okay? Second, it reduces the available float of shares, okay? So they are taking shares off the market. That means that the company is much more worth on the stock market, and also there's less shares to trade. And then if it's institution holding shares, the company is holding shares, and other investors are selling shares to the market, then there's less to trade. And obviously, if there's less to trade and there's like a big news or a bull market, then, more people are fighting for the same amount of shares. And if those shares number is reduced, then obviously there's much more demand than there is stocks available, okay? So it's like a bullish sentiment. Usually when a company announces something like this, then they actually like explode, okay? So many companies did that in the past. They say, hey, we buying back shares in multi-billion dollars worth of programs. And this is what Bitmine actually did. And it did it very early on. I think somewhere in like June, July, they make a statement to the SEC and said like, hey, you know what? We would be able to buy up to $1 billion worth of shares. We don't know yet, so it's open end. So they can do this tomorrow. They can do this also in 2 or 3 years, okay? We will talk about when is the perfect time to do that, but let's talk about first the announcement. So very early on, they showed us that they want to have all the opportunities, right? So they said like they want to sell up to $20 billion in shares. They show us that they sell shares to institutions for a much higher price than the market. And they also show us, hey, investors of Bitmine, you can expect us to buy back shares. And Tom Lee, in one interview, he actually said something when this would be the case, okay? He said, when the company is less worth, and it will be all the time, we have like a valuation roller coaster in this kind of companies where actually you can see that this makes much sense. So, but I would love to show you this clip by Warren Buffett that talks about stocks buyback, okay? So have a look.
Warren, in a recent Financial Times article, you were quoted as saying that the time may come when the company buys back as much as $100 billion of its shares, which equates to around 20% of Berkshire's current market cap. How did you arrive at that $100 billion figure, and over what time frame would you expect this to occur?
Yeah. I probably arrived at that $100 billion figure in about 3 seconds when I got asked the question. And it was a nice round figure, and we could do it. And we would like to do it if the stock was, we've got the money to buy in $100 billion worth of stock. And bear in mind, if we were buying in 100 billion stock, it probably would be that the company wasn't selling at 500 billion. So it might buy well over 20%. We will spend a lot of money. We've been involved in companies where the number of shares has been reduced 70 or 80% over time. We like the idea of buying shares at a discount. We do feel if shareholders, if we're going to be repurchasing shares from shareholders who are partners, and we think it's cheap, we ought to be very sure that they have the facts available to evaluate what they own. I mean, just as if we had a partnership. It would not be good if there were 3 partners and 2 of them decided that they would sort of freeze out the third, maybe in terms of giving them material information that they knew that third party didn't know. So it's very important that our disclosure be the same sort of disclosure that I would give to my sisters who were the imaginary, they're not imaginary, but they're the shareholders to whom I address the annual report every year, because I do feel that if you're going to sell your stock, you should have the same information that's important that's available to me and to Charlie. But we will see. If our stock gets cheap relative to intrinsic value, we would not hesitate. We wouldn't be able to buy that much in a very short period of time in all likelihood, but we would certainly be willing to spend $100 billion. Charlie?
I think when it gets really obvious, we'll be very good at it.
Let me get that straight. What'd you say exactly?
When it gets really obvious, we'll be very good at it.
Yeah. I was hoping that's what you said. Yeah, we will be good at it. We don't have any trouble being decisive. We don't do it. We don't say yes very often. But if we something obvious, I mean, Jay, if you and I are partners, and our business is worth $1 million, and you say you'll sell your half to me for $300,000, you'll have your $300,000 very quickly. Okay, station 2.
So now is the big question then, what would mean a stock buyback for Bitmine, and when is the right thing to do that, okay? I will show you a good thing and a bad thing, so make sure to stay tuned. By the way, let me in the comments where you are watching from and how many shares you have in Bitmine. What is your goal to acquire how many shares? All of those things, let me know in the comments so I will get to know you, okay? So first of all, let's calculate the rough NAV. It's changing all the time, but I would love to dive into that first. So the current NAV is the following. We have about like $10 billion worth of Ethereum, $18 million in Bitcoin. We have about like $500 in cash. We have around like 160 million in the Orbs first moonshot investment that started with a $20 billion investment. So total assets around like 10.28 billion and shares outstanding around like 220 million, okay? This changes all the time, but let's assume that for the video. Now, the current MNAV, where you take the share price of 52 and then you divide by the current NAV, you see we are a little bit premium, okay? We still have some fat to chop, okay, if you say so. And then we are still in front of the most volatile markets in the next couple of weeks, with October being the worst month for stocks ever. Always, right? So be careful that, make sure to dollar cost average. If you think like me, I'm buying every single day between $3,000 to $10,000 worth of Bitmine. I don't care if the price is 60, 50 or 40, okay? Because I know for every time I purchase one single stock for that price, I'm actually buying already a $500 company in the future, okay? So you get like a 90% discount in my personal mindset of this company. Now, what does it mean for the stock price when we would have a lower MNAV? Okay, let's say the MNAV would be not 1.1, it would be actually 0.75. That means the Ethereum is, or the assets under the company is much more worth than the stock price and the market is valuing Bitmine, okay? That would mean with a 0.75 MNAV, we would somewhere be around like $35 if Ethereum doesn't change and the other things doesn't change as well, okay? Now, think about this. If Tom Lee decides, you know what, we are below 1 in MNAV, now it's a good time to buy instead of Ethereum and instead of another treasury company, we will take $1 billion because they have $500 in cash and buy Bitmine shares back from the market. Obviously, this would give us like a huge pump, I think, because it shows that the dilution can be also reversed. Second, it would show us that Bitmine leadership thinks that we are currently very cheap because they could also buy Ethereum or they can buy their own stocks, right? So if they buy their own stocks, then this is very bullish. Now, look at this. If they would buy at $1 billion worth of $35 Bitmine shares, that would mean that they would retire, so take off the market about 28.6 million shares, okay? So they would have around like 191 million shares, which give us a new NAV per share of about like 48. Remember, we were at 46.7 and even a billion drop on own share buyback. We would just reduce it to, or we just increase it to 48.5 just by $1. So as you can see, Bitmine, and this is the most amazing thing, already is so big that the $1 billion buyback is actually helping almost zero to the NAV per share. But it would give like a huge signal to the market and investors. So the actual effect of a buyback would be actually from the sentiment and the idea that Bitmine is still very, very cheap in the eyes of the leadership. And the cash that they have is best invested into their own shares. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, I think the most amazing way to do this is actually the following. I think what could happen, let's say we go to October, and October will be like a phenomenal bearish month, okay? Because September was also very good, and usually its seasonality is not so good. And then you have October, which is usually bad. So maybe the effect in October will be even more drastic and the stock falls to, let's say, 30 or even 25 or even 20. I'm not afraid of it because like I know that this will be a beautiful company, and whatever correction or bear market we will have, we will always come on top to new all-time highs. Okay, so that's number one. So you will have the chance in this kind of scenario to just buy more of this beautiful company for much, much less. Okay, so if that happens, I think that will be the perfect timing to buy more shares of their own, right? Because I think that this is something that they will do only if we are crazy below 1 in MNAV, okay? Other than that, as you can see, it's more of a marketing trick kind of, because it doesn't really help so much. It just like gives the sentiment, it gives the bullishness that the company signals by then if they do this, okay? So I think that first, it doesn't make sense really to do it now, and second, they should do it when the MNAV is maybe at 0.5 or maybe 0.4 even, right? If we come ever to this point, right? So let me know in the comments what you think. Check out xtendaytrading.com if you want us to trade for you, all automatically, all hands off. We do everything, and you need at least $10,000 to start. And I see you tomorrow for a brand new vlog. And remember, the grass is greener always on the other side.